This story is titled, My Wife Kept Bringing Up Open Marriage Every Day, and when I finally agreed, she immediately regretted it, because the first person I fucked was her own sister. Hey Reddit, I'm Richard Wilson, 58 years old, and until recently, I thought I was living what most would call a perfect life. I'm a financial analyst making serious money, and I've achieved everything most guys dream of, both financially and personally. From the outside, my life looked like the perfect social media showcase. I have a beautiful wife named Vanessa, who's 54, and we've been married for 25 years. I truly thought we had something special and unbreakable. That was until one fateful night when my world came crashing down. I was sitting in my home office late at night, the dim glow from my laptop screen providing the only light in the room. I was watching something that was about to destroy my world, and I could feel my heart pounding with each passing second. The video showed a woman with short blonde hair, the exact same style my wife always wears. She was walking into frame, looking excited, and I could see the happiness radiating from her face. With her was a younger guy, tall, muscular type with a perfect smile. He had to be a good foot taller than me, maybe 6'2", lean and fit, everything I'm not. Looking at him made my dad bod seem pathetic in comparison. I continued watching as this guy took his shirt off, showing off a physique that put me to shame. He had perfect abs and a chest like a fitness model. The chemistry between them was obvious from the start. I could see it in their eyes, in their movements. My wife didn't hesitate for a second. She started taking off her clothes slowly, teasing him like I've never seen before. She revealed fancy lingerie underneath, but not just any lingerie. It was the same exact set she wore on our 25th anniversary. That night I had planned everything perfectly. I made reservations at the Windsor Hotel downtown, the most expensive place in Denver. I had champagne waiting in our suite. We danced under crystal chandeliers, and she looked so beautiful that night. It ended with what I thought was passionate intimacy, wrapped in each other's arms. I thought it was special for both of us. Now those precious memories felt poisoned. I couldn't stop watching as the video continued, showing them getting more intense with each moment. I saw a side of Vanessa I'd never known, wild and eager in ways she never was with me. Nothing like the gentle wife I thought I knew. Our love was always tender and caring, leaving us feeling connected and happy. But this was something completely different. Raw, primal energy between them. Something I could never give her, no matter how hard I tried. It felt like someone had punched me in the gut. I didn't even recognize this woman anymore. We'd shared everything for 25 years. Our life, our bed, our dreams and hopes, all our little moments and secrets. Now I was watching her overflow with passion for someone who wasn't me. I could barely process what I was seeing. My marriage was crumbling before my eyes, every memory being tainted, every moment we shared suddenly feeling like a lie. My phone suddenly beeped with a text notification. It was from Vanessa, of course. I paused the heartbreaking video, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. The message asked if I could head straight to Whole Foods from the office, as she wanted to know if I wanted something special for dinner. I stared at my phone for a full minute before finally replying coldly, "Nothing special, see you at home." My finger hovered over the keyboard. I wanted to add "love you" out of habit, having typed it for 25 years, but I couldn't bring myself to write those words now. I felt bile rising in my throat as her reply came quickly. "Okay, see you at home, love you, baby." I scoffed at her message, shaking my head and muttering curse words under my breath. A glance at the dashboard clock told me she'd be home in about an hour. Vanessa works as an administrative assistant at the prestigious University of Colorado admissions office. She's been there for the past few years after leaving her previous secretary job at a law firm. She usually works a later shift than me, unless I have important client meetings. Me, I'm pushing 60, stuck analyzing rich people's money all day. I work with wealthy business types, pouring everything into keeping them satisfied and making sure their portfolios stay green. My job requires occasional travel to nearby cities, and that's how I discovered her betrayal. A few months back, I had finished a business trip in a neighboring city. I usually take a flight, but I drove this time since it was only about 3 hours away by car. On the way back, I decided to check our old cabin, a small rustic place up in the mountains about 45 minutes from home. It's a one-bedroom getaway that's been in the family. A modest place with electricity, a working well, a small propane stove for cooking, and an old fireplace for heat during the cold months. Not much else in terms of comfort. The place belonged to Vanessa's late father, and her mother left it to her in the will. We'd only stayed there 3 times in the past decade, with our last visit being 2 years ago. Just a quiet weekend away from everything. I had been thinking about selling the place. We wouldn't get much for it, but it sits on an acre of land near Crystal Lake, part of a small group of similar cabins. The only issue is that security isn't great. Just an old chain link fence along a dirt road. A retired rancher owns all the land and built the cabins to fund his retirement years ago. I wanted to make sure no one was squatting there or had broken in while we were away. As I drove up the dusty road, I wondered who'd even want this place. Maybe hunters looking for a seasonal spot or an older couple wanting a weekend retreat. We keep a spare key under a specific rock in the garden. I used it to get inside and check things out. The water from the well was still working fine, but I noticed something odd in the bathroom. The shower curtain wasn't fully closed, different from how we always leave it. I also found faint soap marks around the sink, which I remember cleaning thoroughly during our last visit. I started realizing someone had been here since our visit 2 years ago. Nothing was broken or stolen, though. The kitchen chairs were slightly out of place, and there were a few other small changes in the bedroom. I spotted old tire tracks in the driveway, too faded to really tell what kind. The other cabins were all empty and abandoned. No one had been around for years except for those mysterious tire tracks. I spent half an hour checking everything, then left feeling confused and uneasy. I thought maybe Vanessa had come here alone, which was hard to believe but had to be considered. If someone had broken in, why was there no damage? Why was nothing stolen or trashed? Troublemakers usually leave a mess behind. They don't bother putting shower curtains back. Everything was nearly perfect, but not quite. I only noticed because I'm detail-oriented, always checking numbers at work. The same habit carries over to my home life. Something felt off about the whole situation, so I decided not to mention it to Vanessa. I'd never been the suspicious type of husband, but this was too strange to ignore. I had trusted my wife for a quarter century, yet my gut feeling said something wasn't right. I needed solid proof before bringing it up. I didn't want to seem paranoid or create problems over nothing. But I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. I made the decision to investigate further. I bought an expensive surveillance camera set, high-end stuff, top of the line. I installed them carefully around the cabin, one watching the porch and driveway, another in the living room covering the kitchen, and the last one in the bedroom, angled toward the bathroom. If the door was left open, it would catch everything. I never told Vanessa about the cameras and started making weekly trips to check the recordings. The round trip only took a couple hours, easy to cover up my absence. Vanessa was usually out shopping those days, or visiting friends across town, sometimes at the new health spa she had joined last year. She'd lost weight recently and was looking great for a woman her age. She really took care of herself lately. The first 2 trips to the cabin showed nothing unusual, and I started doubting if the cameras were worth the money. But the third visit changed everything. I downloaded the footage quickly at the cabin's kitchen table and felt my whole world crashing down. I saw my blonde wife stepping out of a fancy sports car with a much younger guy. They were both smiling and laughing like teenagers, acting like they'd done this before. They walked hand in hand to the cabin door. I watched as Vanessa got the key from under the rock and let them both inside like it was routine. My hands turned to fists watching the screen. I saw my wife grab this guy the moment the door closed. They started kissing like they were starving for each other. There was no denying what I was seeing anymore. This was the first real proof of her cheating. I had never seen anything like this before. It made me physically sick to my stomach. I didn't actually throw up, but I felt disgusted and completely broken. I sat there in shock for a long time before I finally managed to leave the cabin. I made sure everything was exactly as I found it. I didn't want her suspecting I'd been there. I knew this wasn't the first time they'd used the cabin, and it probably wouldn't be the last either. I checked to make sure the cameras were still working properly, then drove home with a shattered heart. I wanted to confront her immediately. I wanted to destroy her lover and wreck everything in sight. Somehow I managed to calm down during the drive. Until an hour ago, I had lived in blissful ignorance. I had loved her more than anything, and always thought she felt the same about me. We'd talked about cheating many times, and I thought we shared the same values. Obviously, I was wrong about that. I needed more information before losing control. I remembered what my late father always said. Think before you act, son? But Dad never dealt with anything like this. The drive home got harder with each mile. Painful questions kept invading my mind. I wondered if this was the only time she'd cheated. The way they acted suggested it wasn't. But what if it was just a one-time mistake? The recording had no sound, so I couldn't know what they discussed. Did I really want to end a 25-year marriage over what might be a moment of weakness? I still loved her deeply despite everything, which made the betrayal hurt even worse. A big question kept haunting me. If we got divorced, who would want me at 58? I had to admit I was overweight, not exactly healthy, and not much of a catch anymore. I also had to acknowledge that my bedroom skills obviously weren't enough for my wife. Meanwhile, Vanessa still attracted men. The videos proved that pretty clearly. She was still attractive at her age and probably had guys interested all the time. But what about me? I felt too old to start over. The chances of finding someone like her seemed impossible. These thoughts tortured me the whole way home. I finally pulled into our driveway, and thank God Vanessa wasn't home yet. I found a note on the kitchen table saying she was out shopping and wouldn't be back until dinner time. I tore the note into tiny pieces, my anger taking over again. I wondered if she was with that guy right now. It had been over a month since I found the first video, and I had found 2 more since then. The latest showed them on the cabin sofa, proving this wasn't a one-time thing. All 3 videos showed the same man, which made it even worse somehow. When I first found the videos of her affair, I tried acting normal, though inside I was seething with suspicions and rage. I started analyzing every detail of her life, every piece of clothing she wore, every move she made around the house, every place she visited during the day. I decided against hiring a private detective. I wanted to handle this myself. I secretly installed a GPS tracker in her car and monitored her movements on my computer like a hawk. Her routine seemed perfectly normal, except for shopping trips and gym visits. I took a few days off work to follow her and found she usually went straight home unless it was a workout day at her health spa. That place was where she spent most of her time. I started noticing something strange. My wife was working out like never before. She had always been an attractive woman, but now she was in absolutely perfect shape. I played the role of supportive husband, cheering when she signed up for new classes and applauding her progress at getting fit, all while pretending not to know the truth. Then a revelation hit me hard. This health spa wasn't just a regular gym, it was their meeting spot. The guy in the videos clearly worked out, given his muscular physique. I decided to follow her from work one day. I got to the spa before she arrived and watched her walk in through the main entrance. I could see her exercising through the big windows. I parked far enough away not to be noticed and observed how she interacted with the staff. It didn't take long to spot something. I noticed how friendly she was with a particular young trainer. The guy had short dark hair and an athletic build. I took some photos with my digital camera and waited until she left the building. I saw her walk out with the young trainer, and they exchanged words by her car. The conversation looked natural and friendly. The young guy made her laugh easily. She put her hand on his arm while talking, and just before she left for the day, he wrapped his arm around her waist and planted a quick kiss on her cheek. She gave him a warm, loving smile. They were obviously very affectionate together. I drove home and locked myself in my office. I looked up the trainer on the spa's website and found his name, Thomas Harrison. He was only 28 years old and worked as a senior personal trainer. I spent the next few days watching the spa. I would park across the street and observe them. I saw Thomas flirting with her every time she arrived for a workout. He gave her tons of attention during sessions and always escorted her to her car afterward. Their familiarity was obvious to anyone. Thomas seemed to flirt with many women. He had a typical player personality. Despite the huge age difference, with Vanessa being an attractive, mature woman, she probably caught his attention during workouts and found his charm irresistible. The 2 of them got involved somehow. I bet it was Vanessa's idea to use the cabin as their secret meeting place. I have to admit it was a clever choice. Using our house would be too risky. Nosy neighbors would notice a strange car. My frequent visits to the cabin might have left evidence of her affair. A hotel would leave a paper trail, and a local place would be too dangerous as someone might recognize them. But the cabin was the perfect hiding spot. Secluded, far from our neighborhood. She knew I never went there, and as long as she kept the place clean, I'd never know about the affair. It was the perfect spot for a cheating wife. If I hadn't checked the cabin after my trip, I'd still be completely clueless. I found the first video a week ago and was still managing to hide my bitterness. It was really tempting to confront Vanessa, but I wanted to plan this carefully. The latest video of her with her lover fueled my rage even more, though I was still keeping my composure somehow. The sight of her enjoying the affair drove me crazy. I realized something important. Even if she ended it now, I couldn't stay with her anymore. The disrespect she had shown was unforgivable. No amount of apologies could fix this. Keeping quiet gave me time to prepare. Being a numbers guy came in handy. I knew how to protect my assets when the divorce happened. I had a good amount in the bank and was planning to make sure she didn't get much. The fantasy of leaving her broke crossed my mind. I wanted revenge on her lover too, but violence wasn't who I was. I wasn't some criminal or mobster, just a regular guy trying to keep his family together. I had to plot my revenge carefully while preparing for the inevitable divorce. It wasn't a pleasant situation, but I didn't have any other choice. I heard her car pulling into the garage, which made my stomach tighten instantly. I fought to keep my anger under control and kept pretending everything was normal. I used to love hearing her come home, but now it was like swallowing bitter medicine. She walked into the kitchen looking sharp, all dressed up in her office clothes, her hair perfectly styled as always, with that smile that used to make my heart skip. "Hey, honey," she chirped, coming in with groceries. "How's it hanging?" "Okay," I replied with a tight smile. "Starving, though. Got some ribes. Fire up the grill and I'll make salad." "Sounds good," she agreed, then headed to the kitchen completely oblivious. She had no idea about the storm brewing inside me. I put on a calm face and headed out to the deck to handle the grill. It was hard to act normal after watching the latest video. I used to look forward to this, eating together, sharing our day, spending the evening as a couple. Now her presence made my skin crawl. I didn't see her as my wife anymore, just an aging woman with a younger lover. I couldn't help but admire her acting skills, though. She came home every day with a cheerful attitude and acted loving and faithful perfectly. If I didn't know better, I would think she was the same devoted wife as always. We were both pretending now, but she was much better at it. For me, keeping up the appearance was almost unbearable. I nearly lost control several times over the past weeks, but somehow managed to hold it together. It was fascinating how she kept her double life, acting as a normal wife at home while regularly cheating behind my back. The most confusing part was the sex. Now she was offering it regularly, whereas before the affair, I had to practically beg. Now she was initiating everything and even encouraging it sometimes. I knew it was probably guilt sex, but after seeing her with her lover, I doubted she felt guilty anymore. I used to think she was an honest person, but now she was lying convincingly and hiding the affair without showing any guilt. It was like she was a completely different person. After grilling the steaks, we sat down for dinner. There was barely any conversation happening, just small talk floating around like a ghost. Mostly, it was just a silent, awkward meal. Vanessa was fidgeting like a nervous cat, hardly touching her food at all. She kept glancing at me suspiciously, like she was trying to read my thoughts. I could feel the tension in the air, but I kept my mouth shut tight. I knew one wrong word might break my act. We usually have coffee and dessert after dinner, but tonight I just wolfed down my food quickly and cleared the table in record time. I needed to escape this tension, so I retreated to the living room and turned on the TV for distraction. Vanessa followed with a wine glass and sat down right next to me on the couch, staring at me so intensely that I wished I had gone to my office instead. "Everything cool, Richard?" she asked during a commercial. Her voice sounded weirdly sweet and my stomach started churning. I felt like she might suspect something and I fought to keep my poker face. "I'm peachy," I managed to say, trying to keep my voice steady. "You seem wound up today," she said while rubbing my arm. "Something on your mind from work, honey?" I felt my throat getting tight. "Nah, all good," I barely croaked out. I wanted the conversation to end, but words kept wanting to burst out. "Why'd you ask me that?" I blurted out, keeping my eyes glued to the TV screen. "I don't know," she said softly, leaning in closer to me. Her touch felt warm and familiar. "Maybe we need some US time," she suggested, her voice all light and teasing. "Been a while, you know." A nervous giggle followed her words. My response came out strained. "Really?" Her laughter sounded bright but forced. "Yeah," she smiled suggestively. "I miss you, honey. Starting to wonder if maybe you're not into me anymore." She added with a playful tone. We've known each other long enough to read each other perfectly, but right now her laughter seemed fake, and my chuckle came out awkward as I struggled to hide my discomfort. "Oh no, I am," I said, followed by forced laughter that filled the room, but the tension stayed thick and heavy. She turned back to the TV and we fell into a strange silence. She used to hint at wanting sex often but would refuse when actually asked. It wasn't something I thought much about. Sometimes she'd make the first move and I was always eager to follow her hints. Her moves were subtle back then. A well-timed smile, a suggestive touch, a playful kiss while sitting on my lap. And they usually led to the bedroom. It used to be simple between us, but now, with the knowledge of her cheating, everything felt different. Once I was eager for intimacy, almost desperate sometimes, but now I held myself back constantly. The lack of physical connection was becoming obvious. Even Vanessa was noticing the changes now. Our sex life was basically non-existent. We were more like roommates than a married couple. She was starting to catch on, and I knew I couldn't keep pretending much longer. There had been no intimacy for several weeks now. Knowing she was with someone else made everything complicated. I had seen how passionate she was with her lover, which was the complete opposite of how she was with me. It used to take forever to get her in the mood. But now, with her new experiences, she was incredibly alluring. I was running out of patience, though. Despite her seductive behavior tonight, I was determined to hold back. I didn't want to compete with her new lover. I knew any intimacy now would leave her unsatisfied, based on the way she reacted to his body, something I never saw with me before. For the past month, I had made a conscious effort to ignore all her advances. When she made a suggestive comment, I would act like I didn't hear it. In bed, I would keep my distance and pretend to fall asleep quickly. I knew I couldn't keep this up forever. We used to have a satisfying relationship, even if it was somewhat inconsistent. I believed we were compatible until the videos showed her uninhibited side, which completely shattered my confidence. Now I suspected all her expressions of pleasure were just pretending for my sake. Vanessa sighed beside me, and her voice got soft and suggestive. I thought you might want to head to bed early tonight. Are you tired? I asked carefully, trying to read her mood. She giggled and playfully slapped my arm. I'm not. How about we go to bed now? Maybe, Yeah, I know, I replied quickly, feeling my face getting hot and sweat forming on my forehead. I could feel her puzzled stare as she noticed my lack of enthusiasm. Maybe later, I said calmly. You go ahead. I want to watch this show a bit longer. She sighed, clearly disappointed. I could still feel her warmth next to me, the scent of her blonde hair, and the spicy perfume she always wears. It was getting harder to resist, and I tried suppressing my desire and ignoring her confused looks. My love for her made this so difficult. Vanessa was clearly baffled by my reluctance toward her and turned her attention back to the TV, her pride obviously wounded by my rejection. I decided to let her feel the sting of being turned down for once. I watched as Vanessa yawned loudly and stretched in a way that showed off her figure, obviously trying to get my attention. I stayed focused on the television screen. When she realized she wasn't getting a reaction from me, she finally sighed deeply. Guess I'm tired, honey. I'm heading to bed now. Care to join? I hadn't heard that offer in years. I'll be up soon, I replied casually. Just wake me when you come up. Might not fall asleep right away. Vanessa gave me a long look before leaving. I felt a wave of relief hit me and stayed in the living room for 3 more hours. It was past 1 a.m. when I finally went upstairs. I waited until I was sure she was sleeping before slipping into bed. Sleep didn't come easily. I woke up early despite my fatigue and quietly left the bed. I got dressed in the guest room so I wouldn't wake her. I was holding onto my pride and refused to be intimate while she was having an affair. I missed the days when closeness was simple, but since she started the situation, I refused to pretend everything was normal. I wouldn't reward her behavior. If she wanted physical intimacy that badly, she could get it from her lover. Her betrayal was her choice, and it wasn't my job anymore to ensure her happiness. The atmosphere at home was getting worse. Vanessa was confused by the lack of communication. There was no affection between us anymore. We only spoke occasionally during dinner. I never initiated physical contact, and when she tried to hug me, my body would go completely rigid. Sometimes I even flinched at her touch. Something was clearly troubling me, but I kept completely silent. She tried starting conversations, but I either deflected or avoided her concerns. The loving connection we once had completely evaporated, which made talking even harder. The next night, she tried seducing me again, and I met her efforts with total disinterest. She wondered if I knew about the affair, but quickly dismissed the thought. She and Thomas had been very careful. They only acted friendly during workouts to avoid raising suspicion and saved physical contact for away from the spa, out of sight from acquaintances. She kept the intense pleasure from her young lover for their meetings at her father's old cabin. Vanessa was concerned about my behavior, but not overly worried. She still claimed to love me and wanted to be a supportive wife. She assumed it was work-related stress, which happened sometimes with my job. Despite her disappointment over the lack of intimacy, she felt she had done her part. She had been more forward in the past month than in previous years. even when she wasn't particularly aroused herself. She couldn't understand why I seemed uninterested and wondered if I wasn't attracted to her anymore, which seemed unlikely in her mind since she was in better shape now than in years. It was ironic how I was losing interest while her desires were getting stronger. She was getting attention from younger men everywhere. Her improved figure was getting noticed at work. She was surrounded by college guys all day and frequently got approached. She had to be careful not to encourage them despite her own increasing desires. She still wanted me to be happy. Our sex life was never particularly exciting, so she wasn't too worried about the emotional distance. She planned to keep being a loving wife while saving her passionate side for meetings with her younger lover. She knew the affair would eventually lose its excitement, but for now, it was still completely thrilling. Whenever possible, she met Thomas at the cabin for a couple hours of intense passion, then returned to her routine with me. She made sure everything was meticulously clean to avoid raising any suspicion. They avoided using the bed for their encounters and chose other areas that were easier to clean. Despite my recent behavior, she wasn't ready to end the affair. As the next week passed, my indifferent attitude continued, and Vanessa started to worry that I might suspect something. She decided to take a break from the affair, at least until I seemed more like my old self. She told Thomas about the temporary break, and although he was disappointed and thought she was overreacting, he agreed to pause things. By the second week of their break, Vanessa was finding it increasingly difficult to ignore her cravings. Her mind constantly wandered to the cabin and those passionate moments. She wasn't interested in pursuing anyone else, but being around attractive men at work made her more susceptible to attention. Before the affair, she had barely noticed her male coworkers and never focused much on physical attraction. Now, after regular passion with Thomas, she felt like she couldn't live without it. She was overwhelmed by constant desires. She finally decided to end this period of celibacy during her weekly workout session. She reached out to Thomas and told him she was eager to resume their affair. He was thrilled to hear from her and eagerly agreed to continue their secret meetings. They kept a respectful distance that day and pretended everything was completely normal. As he walked her to her car, they discussed plans for the following week. I had mentioned a business meeting that day, which would give her a precious few hours, the perfect time to sneak away. Vanessa returned home feeling energized. She spent the evening with me, and even though the atmosphere was still subdued, and I was more somber than usual, she didn't raise her concerns. She had grown used to my distant behavior over the past several weeks. Despite my lack of interest in our physical relationship, she focused on her anticipation of the passionate meeting planned for the next week. She set aside her frustrations as she dealt with my melancholy presence and tried to keep the mood light and friendly between us at home. Her cheerful demeanor carried over to work, and even her boss noticed her happiness. "Why are you so chipper?" her boss asked on Friday. "Oh, nothing special," Vanessa replied with a smile. "Things are just going well for me lately. I'm happy with how my life is going." "Did Richard get a promotion? Or did you win the lottery?" her boss joked. "Nothing like that," Vanessa chuckled. "I'm just grateful for my home life. Richard has been wonderful. I appreciate everything I have. Things aren't perfect, but they could be a lot worse." "That's a great attitude, Vanessa. I wish everyone thought like that," her boss remarked. After work, she headed home feeling elated, eagerly anticipating her upcoming meeting with Thomas the next week. She wanted to cool down with a shower as soon as she got home and was delighted to find that I had made dinner. She hugged me tightly and was pleasantly surprised when I returned the hug and even kissed her cheek. "This is wonderful, Richard," she exclaimed, looking at the prepared meal. "Would you like wine with dinner, honey?" I asked. "Yes, I'd love a glass," she replied suggestively, then added, "But I don't want to get too sleepy. I want to reward you later for making such a delicious meal." "Your smile is reward enough, darling," I said. "Oh, no," she giggled. "I'm going to give you something much better than a smile tonight. It's been too long since we've been together. I want to show my wonderful husband how much I love him." I smiled back warmly. "I think you're wonderful too," I told her. We enjoyed dinner together and chatted more openly than usual. Vanessa was happy to see me engaging. After cleaning up the kitchen, we settled in the living room to watch TV, following our usual routine. Tonight, though, she was determined. She wanted to rekindle our intimacy. It had been weeks since our last physical contact. She missed it despite having a lover and was eager to fulfill her husband's desires too. She noticed I was in a better mood than usual, which encouraged her more. During a commercial break, Vanessa touched my arm softly and excused herself to the bedroom. She changed into more revealing clothes, picking a thin tank top from the dresser and adding tight shorts to her outfit. She knew I liked her in skimpy clothing. Feeling bold, she skipped wearing a bra. She figured the tiny top and bikini panties would surely spark some interest from her usually indifferent husband. She admired her reflection in the mirror and couldn't help but smile at herself, pleased with how alluring she looked, even at her age. She was confident I wouldn't be able to resist and eagerly headed back to the living room, ready to seduce me. She found me in the kitchen when she returned. She took a seat on the sofa, adopted a seductive pose, and waited patiently for my return. When I joined her with drinks, beer for me, wine for her, she flashed a sultry smile and patted the seat beside her invitingly. My eyebrows raised at her outfit, and she could feel the tension building as I took my place next to her. "Filled your glass?" I said, handing her the drink. "Hope you wanted more." "Yes, definitely in the mood for more," Vanessa replied, dropping hints as subtly as she could. "I'm in the mood for something else too," I remarked casually. "I can see," she said with amusement. She knew she looked enticing and was ready for whatever came next. She couldn't help wondering to herself how Thomas would react seeing her dressed like this, but she was careful not to appear too eager. She let me make the first move, maintaining her ego carefully. She sat close, signaling her readiness, but I stayed focused on the TV. She gradually moved closer, sipping her wine slowly. She tried cuddling up to me, resting her head on my shoulder and gently rubbing my arm, hoping for a response, but I didn't even glance her way as the next show began. Vanessa started feeling tired and frustrated by my continuing indifference. She was getting drowsy from the wine and didn't realize that I had slipped a sleeping pill into her drink earlier. Before long, she drifted off on the sofa. She woke up later in darkness, covered with a warm blanket. I was nowhere to be found. Confused and half asleep, she mumbled to herself. She noticed it was 4 a.m., climbed into bed next to me, and fell asleep, both exhausted and annoyed. The next day, resentment bubbled up about my lack of attention. She felt I had missed a prime opportunity for an intimate moment together. She finally got up around noon and found me in the kitchen. "Morning, honey," I greeted her cheerfully. "Want some coffee?" "Yeah, sure," she replied flatly. "What happened last night?" she inquired. "You fell asleep," I explained with a smile. "Figured you had a tough week. You needed rest. You looked so peaceful. I didn't want to wake you." "You should have woken me," she said, irritated. "I know," I replied vaguely. "By the way, Vanessa," I continued, "how about we go away for the weekend?" "Go away?" she echoed, still groggy and confused. "Yeah, let's go to the cabin for a couple of days," I suggested with a grin. "We've both been working hard lately. Haven't spent much time together. I know we haven't been there in years, but we could use some time together. It's so peaceful there. I bet we could reconnect and have some fun." "Go away," she echoed again, still trying to fully wake up. Her eyes widened as she grasped my suggestion, realizing I was actually proposing a weekend getaway that could lead to intimacy after leaving her hanging the night before. This was completely unexpected. "Fun, huh?" she asked curiously. I chuckled at her tone. "Yeah, I know I'm not the most romantic guy, but breaking out of our usual routine might spark something. Just for the weekend, since we both have work on Monday. What do you think?" Vanessa shrugged her shoulders. "I suppose so. Should we pick up some supplies?" "Already handled that," I said with a grin. "Well, aren't you the planner?" she teased. "Always," I laughed back. "Let's clean up, get dressed, and head out. Start our weekend right." As Vanessa considered my proposal, her apprehension gave way to excitement. A weekend away might help fix things, and with my suggestion, she might even get a chance to finally seduce me properly. "All right, I'll get changed and pack a bag," she agreed. "Fantastic," I responded eagerly. "I've got my things ready. I'll load them into the car. We can head out soon." During the drive to the cabin, Vanessa tried using her cell phone. "Oh, great," she muttered to herself, fiddling with her phone frustratedly. "I thought it was charged, but it's dead." "No worries," I said calmly. "You can use mine if you need it." "No, it's fine," she replied, brushing it off casually. "Nothing urgent. I'll just wait until we get to the cabin. I can charge it there." An hour and a half later, we arrived at the cabin. We put away the food supplies and made quick sandwiches for lunch. Vanessa felt a mix of emotions, happy but slightly uneasy. She surveyed the quaint space carefully, checking for any signs of her affair, but found nothing out of place. I, too, seemed completely oblivious to anything being wrong. After lunch, we took a leisurely walk around the crystal-clear lake. We chatted and laughed together, soaking in the picturesque scenery. I held her hand while walking, pointed out interesting sights, and even caught her when she stumbled. My affectionate behavior surprised her and made her feel almost guilty about the secret meeting she had planned later in the week. The afternoon turned out blissful, and the evening only enhanced our closeness. When we returned to the cabin, Vanessa took a chance and kissed me tenderly. I responded warmly to her advance. As night fell, we played some music and shared a bottle of wine together. I told her amusing stories from our years together. Tipsy and feeling bold, she suddenly encouraged me to hold her closer. When I did as she asked, wrapping my arms around her, she felt a rush of anticipation. The romantic atmosphere carried through as we headed to bed. Unlike our routine at home, we lay together sharing tender kisses and gentle caresses. Vanessa was eager for physical intimacy. "It's been so long," she whispered softly, parting her legs invitingly. "Please, honey, don't tease me. I'm yours. Take me. I'm ready." "You are?" I teased her, my voice low and enticing. "Yes," Vanessa breathed heavily, her excitement clearly visible. I could scream. Desire for me surged through her as she awaited my response. "Can't you?" I replied. Vanessa tried focusing on me, but her mind kept drifting away, comparing our slow, intimate moments with her passionate encounters with Thomas. Both experiences were thrilling in different ways, but tonight with me felt more complete. My affection showed in everything, every word, every touch, every move, including our intimate moments. The contrast was stark with Thomas. He was driven purely by lust with no emotional connection. He treated her like a vessel for pleasure. While she enjoyed his attention, she wouldn't trade it for the connection she was having with me right now. Suddenly, a noise outside jolted Vanessa from these wandering thoughts. It seemed too early to sleep, but with no TV to distract us, an early bedtime felt appropriate. Another suspicious sound followed, heightening our alertness. "What's that?" I whispered with concern. "Is someone outside?" "I don't know," Vanessa whispered back, fear clearly rising in her voice. A new sound from the porch area made her heart race faster. "What should we do?" I pushed the covers aside quietly and got out of bed carefully. "You stay here," I instructed firmly. "I'll check it out." As I moved toward my bag, the door handle started rattling, sending Vanessa into panic. Before she could see what I was doing, the front door suddenly flung open, and a dark figure loomed in the doorway. Vanessa's mind was racing wildly. This was a home invasion happening right now. She screamed in absolute terror. The room descended into chaos instantly. A deafening bang shattered the silence, followed by another shot. Vanessa's world spun wildly as she realized I had just shot the intruder from the safety of the bedroom. She heard the thud of the man collapsing, clutching at his neck where the bullet struck. Another scream tore from her throat as disbelief gripped her completely. "Oh my God," she wailed, hands flying to her face as she crumpled in complete shock. I stayed composed despite the horror. I edged toward the fallen man carefully, keeping my gun steady in my grip. I made careful movements, checking for any signs of life. I ventured outside to secure the area, then returned and turned on the lights, unknowingly revealing Vanessa's worst nightmare. Her eyes widened in complete horror as she saw the lifeless body on the floor. It was Thomas lying there motionless. Overcome with shock and grief, Vanessa collapsed. I pulled her close to me, murmuring reassurances softly. "It's all over, honey," I whispered gently, my voice becoming her lifeline in the middle of the chaos. "We're safe now." As I continued comforting her, my tone became more serious. "We need to call the police," I said grimly. "They'll treat this like a crime scene. Just stay here, Vanessa." Her mind was a whirlwind of panic and despair. She collapsed onto the bed, tears streaming down her face. I watched her grimly. When she stumbled to the bathroom, overcome with nausea, I seized the opportunity quickly. I discreetly grabbed her cell phone and disabled it completely, then slipped it back into her purse. I returned to the body on the floor and removed an envelope from Thomas's jacket. I read the note inside with a bitter scowl, a note that I had placed on his car earlier that day. "This coupon is valid for tonight only," the note read clearly. "Please bring this and redeem it for an evening of intense sex. I apologize for the short notice, but I just found out he's away this weekend. Can you meet me at the cabin, lover? I hope so, and I'll make it worth your while. Signed, your faithful partner." I crumpled the note angrily, fury flaring once more. I quickly headed outside to the driveway where Thomas's car was parked. The cabin's location was perfect, a dead zone making cell signals unreliable. "I'll be right back," I called out to Vanessa. Having trouble reaching the cops, let me head outside and see if I can get a better signal. I hurried to a secluded spot by the lake, hidden behind thick shrubs. I set the note and envelope on fire and watched the flames consume the evidence. I used my lighter methodically. After the paper turned to ash, I rubbed the remnants between two rocks and covered them with fallen leaves, erasing all traces of my deceitful plan. I took a deep breath to steady myself. Killing someone was an emotional ordeal that I hadn't fully anticipated, even though I knew what might happen when I left the note on Thomas's car. The reality of ending a life weighed heavily on me. My hands were still trembling while making the 911 call. I needed to keep my composure now and let the situation play out naturally. I had already disabled all the surveillance cameras and hidden the recordings where no one would find them. It was fortunate that I had kept my knowledge of the affair to myself. Once the police started questioning Vanessa, everything would come to light. Even if she didn't confess, it wouldn't take long for them to discover her connection to the health spa where Thomas worked, linking them together perfectly. The police arrived within an hour. I greeted them at the door and admitted to shooting the intruder. They confiscated my gun, bagging it as evidence carefully. When questioned about the incident, I assured them I hadn't touched anything and hadn't moved the body since I fired the shots. Vanessa corroborated my account, but the police grew suspicious when they learned the intruder had a key to enter. "How did he get the key?" they asked. I explained the key's presence carefully, claiming ignorance about its significance. When they questioned Vanessa, she broke down almost immediately, overwhelmed by the shock of Thomas's death and her own crushing guilt. She confessed to the affair completely, her story spilling out through a flood of tears. I pretended to be shocked by her revelation. My performance seemed to convince the officers, who exchanged wary glances. Both of us were taken to the station for detailed questioning. A forensic team arrived at the cabin and meticulously examined everything. I contacted a lawyer I had used before and followed his instructions carefully, refraining from saying anything more until my legal counsel arrived. Meanwhile, Vanessa, devastated and vulnerable, divulged every detail about the affair, unaware of my careful manipulation. Her confession revealed the extent of their relationship, but couldn't provide any incriminating information about my role in the situation. After spending a grueling night and part of the next day in custody, we were both finally released, but instructed to stay in town. Despite extensive questioning and thorough investigations over the following weeks, no incriminating evidence surfaced regarding the shooting. I sensed there was lingering suspicion, but with the absence of concrete proof, the authorities had no choice. They had to classify it as justified homicide. Invading someone's home at night was unquestionably a criminal act, and a jury would likely side with the homeowner. Even though questions remained, the homeowner probably would get the benefit of the doubt. I brought Vanessa home that Sunday. She was completely falling apart, endlessly apologizing for her infidelity until I told her to stop talking. I revealed that I already knew everything and had maintained a facade of confusion while she spilled all the details to the police. I admitted feeling regretful about having to end a young man's life, but I saw no alternative to eliminate the threat and restore my own dignity. By Monday, I returned to work, leaving Vanessa to handle her personal turmoil. When I arrived home that evening, I found a neighbor there supporting her, preventing her from falling apart completely. After a tense dinner, I finally confronted her about the affair. Vanessa wept through the entire conversation, offering familiar excuses and pleading for forgiveness. Her justifications fell on deaf ears. I handed her divorce papers on Thursday. Vanessa hadn't returned to work and was completely devastated upon receiving the papers. Losing both her husband and lover in the same week took a severe toll on her. Concerned for her well-being as she cried uncontrollably, I took her to the emergency room. I packed a suitcase for her while she pleaded for me to stay and begged me to reconsider. "What am I going to do now?" she asked. With little sympathy, I responded coldly, "I don't know. We're getting divorced, Vanessa. You're no longer my concern." Despite her desperate pleas of love, I added harshly, "Just find another lover. You seem to have no trouble attracting them. Just make sure he's as well endowed as the one you were with." My brutal words left her sobbing inconsolably as I walked away, never to return. I was never formally charged with any crime, but the authorities kept a close watch on me. They kept questioning my acquaintances about the shooting incident. A cloud of suspicion hung over me, casting a shadow on my career and eventually leading me to leave my job. But I soon landed another position and managed to keep my finances intact. We sold the house and cabin and divided the proceeds between us. I got half of the marital assets, but kept additional funds hidden from Vanessa. Her lawyer probed my financial situation, forcing me to maintain a lower profile and be cautious about anything that could incriminate me. Despite the turmoil from the shooting and divorce, I forged ahead with my life. I started a home exercise routine and transformed my physique completely, finally shedding the extra weight. I kept in touch with our daughter, who hoped for reconciliation, but I remained firm in my decision. Despite my insecurities about my attractiveness, I began dating older women and found pleasure and companionship in their company. It took time, but I eventually gained the confidence to ask someone out. I found solace in reconnecting socially, although I wasn't ready for a long-term relationship. At 58, I still garnered attention from women, and in the months following the divorce, I found myself less lonely than anticipated as I adjusted to my new way of life. In contrast, Vanessa descended into deep depression and struggled to cope with recent events. Her once carefree attitude toward life and love completely vanished. Despite her ongoing feelings for me and the loss of her younger lover, she couldn't regain control over her emotions enough to seek new companionship. The vibrant sex life she once had seemed irretrievably lost. She began regular therapy sessions and took medication to manage her mental health issues. Her deteriorating physical health led our daughter to arrange medical care for her. She stopped exercising completely, gained significant weight, and became increasingly reclusive. She abandoned the spa that had caused all the troubles. I heard from friends that she was planning to move out of state to escape the relentless gossip surrounding her affair.